Charity. Already in Abdu'l-Baha's day, relief funds had been established. He encouraged the Save the Children Fund. The Haifa Relief Fund had been created to alleviate the misery of the local population. Twice, the master contributed 50 Egyptian pounds. After the first contribution, his name was placed first on the contributors list. After receiving the second, the military governor, G.A. Stanton, wrote a letter of gratitude in which he stated, "Please accept on behalf of the Committee of Management my very sincerest and most grateful thanks for this further proof of your well-known generosity and care of the poor, who will forever bless you for your liberality on their behalf." Among the most touching contacts the Master had with the poor in the Occident were surely his visits to the Salvation Army headquarters in London and to the Bowery Mission in New York City. On Christmas night, 1912, Abdu'l-Baha visited a Salvation Army shelter in London, where 1,000 homeless men ate a special Christmas dinner. He spoke to them while they ate, reminding them that Jesus had been poor, and that it was easier for the poor than the rich to enter the kingdom of heaven. The men sat enthralled. Some were so impressed that in spite of hunger and the special dinner before them, they forgot to eat. When, on leaving, Abdu'l-Baha gave the warden of the shelter money with which to buy a similar dinner on New Year's night, the men rose to their feet to cheer him as he went, waving their knives and forks in the air. They little realized that he had experienced trials, hardship, and suffering far greater than any they had known. Before Abdu'l-Baha went to the Bowery Mission, he asked friends to convert 1,000 franc note into quarters. At the mission in April 1912, he spoke most lovingly to the several hundred men who were present. "You must be thankful to God that you are poor. For His Holiness Jesus Christ has said, 'Blessed are the poor.' He never said, 'Blessed are the rich.' He said too that the kingdom is for the poor, in that it is easier for a camel to enter a needle's eye than for a rich man to enter God's kingdom." And then he told them, "When Jesus Christ appeared, it was the poor who first accepted him, not the rich. And later, the rich are mostly negligent, inattentive, steeped in worldliness, depending upon their means, whereas the poor are dependent upon God, and their reliance is upon Him, not upon themselves. Therefore, the poor are nearer the threshold of God and His throne." He closed with characteristic humbleness, asking the men to accept him as their servant. After the talk, he stood at the mission hall entrance. He took each hand and placed in each a number of coins, the price of a bed for the night. However, at least one man kept his money, explaining, "That was a heavenly man, and his quarter was not like other quarters. It will bring me luck." But some 80 quarters remained. When the master arrived at his apartment building, he encountered the chambermaid, who had previously been the happy recipient of his roses. Now he emptied all the remaining quarters into her apron. He quickly moved on. When she learned of his gifts at the mission, she vowed she also would give this money away. Juliet Thompson recalled, "Later, as we sat in a group around the master, who was at that moment saying with a laugh, in reply to some question as to the advisability of charity, 'Assuredly, give to the poor. If you give them only words, when they put their hands into their pockets, they will find themselves none the richer for you.' There came a light tap at the door, and there on the threshold stood the little chambermaid. Her eyes were glistening with tears, and in a sort of wonder, and oblivious of the rest of us. She walked straight up to the master. "I came to say goodbye, sir," she said, timidly and brokenly, "and to thank you for all your goodness to me. I never expected such goodness, and to ask you to pray for me." Her head drooped, her voice broke. She turned and went out quickly. In 1907, Corinne True was in Akka with the master. She was one of many who were deeply touched by the love of Abdu'l-Baha, demonstrated so clearly in his customary Friday morning acts of charity. From her window, she saw between 200 and 300 men, women, and children gathered. Such a motley crowd one can see only in these parts. There were blind, lame, cripples, and very feeble persons, the poorest clad collection of people almost that the earth contains. One man had his clothing made of a patched quilt. An old woman had gunny sacking for a cloak. Children were so ragged that their clothing would scarcely stay on them. 2 or 3 of the men believers were with the master. The people were required to arrange themselves in order about 2 sides of the court, and the master began near the gate, giving into the hand of each some piece of money, and then each was required to move out. It was a sight never to be forgotten to see the master going from one to another, saying some word of praise or kindness to encourage each. With some he would stop to inquire into their health, and he would pat them on the back, these poor, dirty-looking creatures, and once in a while we would see him send someone away empty-handed, and he would reprimand him for his laziness. How clear and musical his voice sounded as he went from one to another, giving and praising. The men accompanying him kept order in great kindness but firmness, and saw that each passed on as soon as he had received from the master. Where on this globe can one duplicate such a scene as is enacted every Friday morning in the courtyard of the master of Akka, who is himself a state prisoner to the Turkish government, and has lived in prison or in exile since he was 9 years of age? Later, while resting, the master told Mrs. True about his friends. "These are my friends, my friends. Some of them are my enemies, but they think I do not know it, because they appear friendly, and to them I am very kind, for one must love his enemies and do good to them." He explained that there simply was not sufficient work in Akka. Men could do but 2 kinds of work. They could fish, but the sea had been too stormy lately. Or they could carry loads on their backs, which required great strength. Those who attempted to deceive him were rebuked and told where they might obtain work.